Hey everyone, how's it going? So I know that I promised the Umbreon and Espeon run, but I thought that I could throw something different into the mix, and what better Pokemon to use than Lucario? I mean, he was a champ in the anime, maybe he'll be a champ in our hearts. By now, you guys should already know the rules of the challenge, but for those of you who don't, they will be in the description below. Before we get started, let's look at Lucario as a whole. Stat-wise, he has base 70 HP, 110 attack, 70 defense, 115 special attack, 70 special defense, and 90 speed. So basically, we can either be a physical attacker, a special attacker, or even a mixed attacker. For this run, I wanted to steer clear of using Sword Stance because we all know that it can be a broken move, and I just wanted to make this more entertaining so you guys can all watch me suffer. Moveset wise, we learned a lot of different attack moves, which will make our initial special attack strategy not really valid. But by the time we get to Veilstone City, we can learn a lot of moves like Psychic, and eventually we gain access to Aura Spear and Flash Cannon. I think those will be staples in our run, but we're going to need a good move to counter those ground types. Starting out, we do have access to Metal Claw, which increases our attack 10% of the time, so this may be beneficial. Plus, we can always learn different moves later on thanks to the move tutors. Starting the run, we use the Pokemon randomizer to replace Piplup with Lucario, that way our rival can have Torterra, which will give us a different difficulty than him having Infernape. After obtaining the Pokédex and Poketch, we run into our rival down at Jubilife City. I didn't heal, but it didn't really take us any time at all to defeat him. Sure, the Growl didn't help at all, and then by the time Turtwig comes out, he just starts spamming Withdraw, so it took us a little longer to beat him. But we do win, and that's all that matters. Once we defeat the rival, we can make our way to Gym Leader Rourke. He specializes in rock and ground types, and with Lucario being a steel type, it should go in our favor. I didn't forget to record what Lucario looked like in the beginning, like the stats for him. The issue was that I previously made it this far and had nicknamed him Anubis, but after getting our butts handed to us later, I reset and never saved after I initially received Lucario. He did have the nickname of Anubis. Yes, this is a Pal World reference, but I thought that you guys would all be confused if I left it in the video. Also, we won the battle, so it wasn't super difficult at all. Anyways, I didn't want to have you guys all comment angrily that I changed his nickname later on, so I really just left that part out. With the first gym badge in hand, we can go back to Jubilife where we run into some Team Galactic thugs. After quickly dispatching of them, we find ourselves in Floraroma Town where we find our first Team Galactic commander. I've mentioned this before, but with Lucario steel typing, there's really nothing that she can do. I mean, Zubat really couldn't do anything to us, and when Pure Ugly comes out, we don't flinch to fake out due to our ability Inner Focus. Then we use Force Palm to knock it out in one hit. So yeah, I think having its ability is going to help us out in the long run. At least we know that we can't get flinched, and this will probably help us out in those future double battles too. Since we cleared the Valley Windworks, we traversed through the forest and made it to Eterna City, where we run into Gym Leader Gardenia. She's a grass-type user, so really our attacks will hit for neutral damage. What really frustrates me in this battle is that since we're currently a physical attacker, when her Turtwig uses Reflect, it does not help us out at all. Even with a +1 attack thanks to Metal Claw, all we can do is keep attacking and hoping that Reflect fades away. When it does fade away, Cherrim is out, and thankfully it misses a Razor Leaf, and then we can knock it out in 2 hits. Finally, she sends out Roserade, who manages to paralyze us, and then uses Grass Knot before ultimately succumbing to the damage that we deal to it. We also got an attack increase there at the end, but it doesn't matter because we won our second gym badge. We also learned an attack here at the end. Usually people overlook this move, but Metal Sound will help us even just for a moment. Metal Sound is obviously a Steel-type status move that lowers an enemy's special defense by 2 stages, and when we put our Modest Nature to use, it's going to be like having a temporary Sword Stance. The only drawbacks that I can see on it are that it has 85% accuracy, and it's only temporary because as soon as we knock out a Pokemon, we have to use it again on another. Anyways, let's go ahead and move on to the Galactic Tower here in Eterna City and battle against Commander Jupiter. This goes a lot like the other battle with Commander Mars because Zubat obviously can't do much to us, and with weak defenses, it's going to be difficult for it to overcome our power. But when Skuntank comes out, it's apparent that we are lacking in the attack stat department because it takes us way too long to deal any sort of damage. It doesn't help that 1, it has a Citrus Berry, and 2, it lowered our accuracy with the Smokescreen, but we are taking negligible damage thanks to the quad resist towards dark types. I think that we end up taking more damage from its ability Aftermath than what it was dealing towards us. Thankfully, we win the fight, and now we can move on to the next town. By this time, we've made it to Hearthome City where we find Fantina and our mom at the Pokemon Contest Hall. On a side note, should I do a Master Rank challenge for the Contest Hall? Let me know in the comments below. Getting back to the challenge, Fantina is the 3rd gym leader and she specializes in ghost types. I have no idea why, but this is usually where we start screwing up. I just don't know what it is. Her Pokemon usually have some sort of resistance towards our moves, or maybe they just outspeed and combo us with status conditions and we're sure to lose, but let's see how we fare. Turn 1, she sends out Duskull, and we go for Metal Claw. It burns us with Will-O-Wisp, and thankfully we had a Rossberry equipped, so we saved ourselves some pain. Then we get close to knocking it out as it uses Future Sight. It gets healed with the Super Potion, but we bring it back down, and eventually it goes for Will-O-Wisp again, but it misses. Future Sight ends up hitting us for a small damage, but we take out Duskull easily. Haunter is second, and this is where the battle takes a turn for the worst. It tanks the Metal Claw, and then it confuses us. We then spend the next few turns either hitting ourselves in confusion or asleep as it keeps dealing damage. Luckily, we get an attack boost as we knock it out. With 25 HP remaining, she sends out her ace Mismagius. Oh, and we leveled up, so we have a little more health. I honestly think that having the attack boost mattered, because when we tanked her Side Beam, we dealt enough damage to activate the Citrus Berry, but it didn't heal enough to save her, so we ended up having a first try victory against Fantina. That's 3 gym badges secured. Even if our attack stat is lowered due to our attack deficient nature, we can still deal a ton of damage. Once we defeated Fantina, we can make our way to the building exiting Hearthome City and run into the rival for another battle. So the reason that I chose to make Lucario a special attacker and not a mixed attacker or a physical attacker is because of Pokemon like Staravia. It can be frustrating dealing with a Pokemon that lowers your attack by 1 stage. That drops our attack stat to 66.7% of what it normally is. What doesn't help is that Staravia goes for double team way too often, so it's like we can't really use our attacks to its full potential, and then you start raising evasiveness and we go from barely dealing damage to never really dealing any sort of damage because we can't hit it. And at this point in the battle, I had honestly forgotten that he had Grotle. I feel like choosing it was the best option because it's more defensive than both Monferno and Prinplup, so I'm going to struggle a little more in the future. This is also where the battle kind of draws into a conclusion. We won pretty easily, but it won't always be like this. Real quick, I just wanted to mention that I'd really appreciate it if you guys all subscribe to my channel. The algorithm really hasn't been kind to us lately. We've been putting a ton of effort into each video, and I'd like to see that subscriber number skyrocket. Thank you. Now that we made it to Velstone City, we can make our way to the house where we get the coin case because there's a move I want from the casino. We get TM29 Psychic. This is one of the first moves that I want for our final moveset. Plus, we have a way higher special attack stat, so we're going to make good use of it. So Gym Leader Maylene uses fighting types, which could be bad for us. Her first Pokemon is Meditite, which is fighting and psychic type, so we don't really have anything that's super effective against it. It does use Fake Out, but thanks to our ability, we can still attack it regardless, and deal major damage. She does go for the switch into Lucario, and it does take some damage, not quite enough to activate the Citrus Berry, but enough to help us take it out with a Force Palm. She then sends out Machoke. Just as easily as it came out, it goes back because we overwhelmed it with our psychic attack. Last but not least is Meditite, who goes for a Fake Out, but it gets taken down with our last psychic. This nets us our 4th gym badge. Now that I have access to fly, I head back to Eterna City where I use the Explorer Kit. I use it here because it gives us access to possibly the largest area in the underground. I told you guys I was starting to plan these routes out a little more carefully, and I intend to keep that word. I may have gone overboard because I ended up farming enough to have all of the options just to see what was available. For the next few battles, I definitely need access to Thunder Punch, but later we may need to get another move even though we're not going to be primarily a physical attacker. In Pastoria City, we run into the rival again, and it goes way smoother than last time. When Staravia comes out, we don't really need to worry about the attack drop because we deal enough damage all things considered. Maybe I could have dealt more damage with Psychic, but my ADHD brain just sees super effective as an option, and that's literally all I can resort to. Thankfully, we didn't have any issues as it gets taken out. When Ponyta comes out, it's when I start using Psychic because I realized that it was the better option. But like I said before, if super effective is an option, I use it. Just like against this Weasel, and it technically wouldn't have mattered either way. And when Grotle comes out, we switch back to Psychic, and while it does survive, we get the special defense drop that guarantees our victory, and now we're on to the 5th Gym Leader. Gym Leader Wake specializes in water types. That's good for us because we just learned Thunder Punch not too long ago, but his first Pokemon is Gyarados, and it does drop our attack with Intimidate, so it's going to be a little more difficult than I had originally thought. With our attack stat down 1 stage, it becomes apparent that we aren't strong enough to take on his Pokemon, and even when Quagsire comes out, it's definitely evident that we are going to struggle here. It eventually uses Yawn on us, so the next turn we will end up falling asleep. If we had a 1-turn sleep, it would have been ideal, but we always have to struggle at one time or another. In the end, we succumb to our injuries and end up losing our first battle of the run. I attempted this battle probably 10 times at lower levels and never could win, so 5 levels later, we end up breezing right past all of his Pokemon. If we can just get a one-hit knockout on Gyarados, we move on easily. Also, around this level, we learned Aura Sphere, which is the best move that we can learn because it's base 90 damage and it always hits. Anyways, we got our 5th gym badge and we can start to get heavily into the Team Galactic part of the story. Right outside the gym, we get word that there's a shady dude at the Great Marsh area and we end up chasing this guy all the way to Lake Valor. Once we beat him, Cynthia comes up and gives us a secret potion to give to Psyduck on Route 210. Once we do that, we can move on to Celestic Town to meet up with a grandma, but most importantly, we run into Cyrus, the Team Galactic boss. With 3 Pokemon, he's really just a big pushover. Sneasel easily gets taken down thanks to its 4 times weakness to fighting. Murkrow goes down to a Thunder Punch, and Golbat goes down to a Psychic. While we are several levels higher, I think this just showcases the versatility that you have when running Lucario. Once Cyrus has been defeated, we enter Candilabe City where we have another rival battle. It's really not all that bad now that we are using more special attacks as opposed to physical attacks. We also replaced Thunder Punch with Ice Punch since the rival now has Torterra. This move will be more effective in the long run, all things considered, because the only other time we need an electric type attack will be at the end of the Galactic storyline when Cyrus has a Gyarados. That's a future problem, but for now, this battle wasn't all too bad. The only damage we took was from Floatzel when it used Aqua Jet. It was a pretty easy battle in the end. After defeating the rival, we make a run for the gym leader in this area. Byron hasn't ever been a struggle for us, and this time is no different. I mean, Steel is weak against fighting, and not only that, but their special defense isn't anything to write home about most of the time. There really isn't much to say about this battle aside from the fact that we got our 6th gym badge. When we exit the gym, our rival meets us outside and says that we need to meet Professor Rowan at the library. But then we get interrupted because there's an explosion that appears on the TV. We split up and go our different ways because we're afraid that the Lake Trios are getting harmed. This is where we enter the Lake Valor Cave and have a battle against Commander Saturn. These really aren't any different from the battles that we have in the future, so we're going to skip these for now. Anyways, shortly after defeating him, we go back to Lake Verity and end up helping Dawn in her endeavors. And finally, we arrive to the entrance of Lake Acuity where our rival tells us not to wait up on him. What that really means is that we have to hurry up and help him. This is where we begin the gym leader battle against Candice. At this point in the story, we're pretty overpowered. We replace Ice Punch with Flash Cannon, and since she uses Ice-type Pokemon, it's very one-sided. The only real issue we have is when Frostlass increases her evasion, and we start missing a few attacks. But we resist most of her moves, so we ultimately prevailed and earned our 7th gym badge. With the 7th gym badge in our case, we can run all the way to Lake Acuity and find out that the rival lost to Commander Jupiter. Anyways, we're on the road to Viridian City. Actually, we're on the road to finishing the Galactic storyline because we can finally enter into the Galactic headquarters in Bellstone City. This is where we run into Cyrus once more. His team has improved a little bit, but saying that is stretching the truth. Sneasel will go down to 1 Aura Sphere, while Honchkrow will survive an Aura Sphere and heal with a berry and even manage to land a hit. We do take it out after 2 hits. And the last leg of his team is Crobat, who goes down to a powerful Psychic. With Crobat's defeat, we can move on to releasing the Lake Trio from their control after a quick battle with Commander Saturn. After defeating Cyrus, we make our way to the summit of Mount Coronet where we have the double battle with the rival against Commanders Jupiter and Mars. This battle is pretty interesting because right from the get-go, my plan was to get rid of the Bronzor that usually sets up Light Screen, but it turns out it never even used it. Instead, he used Confuse Ray against Munchlax, and on the following turn, we knock it out. My plan for this battle is to usually leave 1 Bronzor, no matter how annoying they can be, and deal with 1 commander, then make it a 2-on-1 battle with the other. We get to execute this plan and it works marvelously. I just wish Munchlax did more than just stockpile and swallow though. Either way, with or without help, we will ultimately win and with a ton of HP left as well. Once Cyrus opens the Dimensional Rift, we adapt to the ever-changing surroundings and find him at the lowest point possible and commence the battle. During this battle, his team has changed dramatically. First up is Houndoom, and while it is a fire type, it's dark type as well. When we use Aura Sphere, we end up defeating it. His second Pokemon is Gyarados. Luckily, we don't have any sort of physical moves, and we use Metal Sound to drop its special defense 2 stages while it hits for major damage with Earthquake. The next turn, we knock it out with a Psychic. Third is Honchkrow, and 1 powerful Aura Sphere takes it out. Fourth is Crobat, and 1 Psychic is all we need to defeat it. Last but not least is Weavile. It does try to fake us out, but we ignore flinching and land the final Aura Sphere to win us not only the battle, but also finish the Team Galactic storyline. Cyrus's defeat means that we can make our way to Sunyshore City, and after doing the things that we need to do in order to get Volkner to the gym, we find him at the very back of the building and challenge him to a battle. Now, we did have to level up significantly against Cyrus since we kept losing a lot, but thankfully we don't level up very much between then and now. Anyways, getting started with the battle, Jolteon is first. With our level difference, his Pokemon really don't stand a chance against us. I mean, Jolteon and Raichu both go down to an Aura Sphere. I was actually surprised when Luxray survived an Aura Sphere, but the amount of damage that it did to us was negligible in comparison. Shortly after, it got healed, but then we landed a critical hit and knocked it out. Finally, Electivire comes out, and unsurprisingly, it's going to be a 2-shot. With Electivire's defeat comes our 8th and final gym badge. We have 5 more major battles between now and the end of the challenge. When we arrive at the Pokemon League, we deposit our Pokemon and then trigger the rival battle. At this point in the run, I'm glad that I don't really have any sort of physical attacks just because of how annoying Intimidate is in this generation. You can see that we're truly at an advantage being a special attacker since we can easily knock out all of his Pokemon. I mean, we are roughly 15 to 20 levels higher than his Pokemon, but still, we need all the levels for the Elite Four. I also wanted to mention that I'm glad I didn't use Swords Dance, even though we probably could have been at a lower level. Anyways, in this battle, the real struggle was against Torterra, and since we took it out, we easily defeated him. Without much of an introduction, let's get straight into the battles against the Elite Four, starting with Aaron, the Bug-type user. His first Pokemon is Yanmega. We don't have anything that's super effective, but we do have neutral damage moves. Flash Cannon defeats it in one hit. Second is Heracross, and because we have Psychic, we can deal with these fighting types and poison types in an easier fashion. Speaking of poison types, this is the only exception. Drapion resists Psychic types thanks to its Dark typing. Thankfully, we get it down to the red and it activates the Citrus Berry. It deals some damage with Aerial Ace, but it wasn't very much. By some miracle, Aaron decides not to heal and we knock it out on the next turn. His fourth Pokemon is Scizor. Scizor does have some good special defense as it manages to survive by the skin of its teeth. It deals some damage to us and then Aaron decides to heal. Consequentially, that leaves it vulnerable for an attack, and on the following turn we knock it out. His last Pokemon is Vespiquen, who goes down to 2 Flash Cannons, and this secures our first win against the Elite Four. The battle with Bertha is a little more scary since our Steel typing is weak against ground types, and that's all Bertha has. It was pretty scary going up against her team considering that I didn't heal initially. My main concern is not having a whole lot of HP. Bertha managed to surprise me because she switched from Whiscash to Gliscor. It did suffer substantial damage with an Aura Sphere, but then the Psychic takes it out. My real fear is when Hippowdon comes out. That thing is tanky. It even eats up an Aura Sphere and drops us down to 7 HP with an Earthquake before we ultimately knock it out. We're getting so lucky here. Whiscash makes its reappearance, but we easily sweep it. Her fourth Pokemon is Golem. Even with the special defense increase from Sandstorm, we are a little bit too much for it, and even against the Rhyperior, we overwhelm it and secure our second victory. The third Elite Four member is Flint, the Fire-type user. This battle can be just as scary as it went with Bertha. He sends out Houndoom and it goes down immediately to an Aura Sphere. And next is Flareon. There's an issue with Flareon. Not only is it the highest physical attacking non-legendary Fire type in Gen 4, it's got the highest special defense of all Fire types that are not legendary. With that being said, Flareon ends up beating us. I tried this battle at 1 level higher and it goes in our favor. Of course, the Houndoom goes down immediately thanks to an Aura Sphere, and when Flareon comes out, it gets taken down in one hit. Maybe it was a range? Anyways, third is Rapidash, and this is where the battle goes downhill. Well, up until we get to Magmortar, who survives an Aura Sphere. It then uses a Flamethrower to drop us down to 48 HP. Thankfully, we didn't trigger a heal, and on the next attack, we claim victory over the third Elite Four member. This leaves us to the final member, and the second to last battle of the run against Lucian, the Psychic-type user. Almost instantly, this battle goes south. Mr. Mime isn't a fairy type in this generation, so it doesn't immediately faint to our Flash Cannon. And then it sets up Light Screen, which halves our special attack output. This is already looking bad. While it did get to heal, we are dealing much less damage to it. Lucian decides to switch out to Alakazam since it has a move that I can use that's super effective against us. Lucky for us, it does miss more often than it hits. Eventually, we take it out and then Light Screen resolves. Maybe this isn't so bad. Well, his next Pokemon is Gallade, and it survives a Flash Cannon. And great. It heals completely with Drain Punch. I'm pretty sure I spoke way too soon. And yeah, I definitely did because even with the crit, we lost. After several attempts, we run this back. I kept getting unlucky to the point where Mr. Mime would use Light Screen, so I had to keep going until I used Reflect, or any other move instead of Light Screen. While it does manage to survive a hit, Lucian heals it, and on the following turn, Bronzong comes out. This Pokemon was way scarier than Gallade or Alakazam because it's bulky and it knows Earthquake. But after 2 attacks we wipe it out. Against Gallade, the best option is to use Metal Sound because then and only then can we knock it out with 1 hit. We also have to get lucky against Alakazam and pray that the RNG gods bless us with luck so that every Focus Mist does its thing. And hey, maybe at level 69 we weren't fast enough, but at level 70 we outspeed and one-shot it. So that's much better. Lucian decides that it's Mr. Mime's time to go, so he sends it out to meet its fate. And his last Pokemon is Espeon. We launch a devastating Flash Cannon, and then the Espeon counters with a Psychic, dropping us to 23 HP. And then Lucian heals Espeon, but we know that it's a free hit and was only delaying the inevitable because we won and can move on to Cynthia. Honestly, I poured a lot getting to this point. This video took a week later than what I wanted to, and it's because when I initially recorded this run, I had a Lucario with a careful nature and I was running the Sword Stance set. However, when I got to the last hour of recording, my recording software didn't actually finish recording what I wanted, and by that point, I had already beaten the Elite Four and the game saved. So yeah, I couldn't just finish everything if I was missing an important chunk of the film. I will say that with the physical attack setup, we were at level 66 when we won. Anyways, we end up losing against Cynthia the first 15 times before I come up with this following strategy. At level 75, we attempt the battle again, and this is the only level in which I found that I could win. Against the Spiritomb, it's going to be a 2-shot no matter how you look at it. The only way I would reset is if our special defense dropped. Thankfully, that didn't happen as we move on to Lucario. Lucario ultimately faints to our Aura Sphere. Garchomp is third, and I taught Lucario Ice Punch again just for the 4-time super effectiveness to knock it out because Dragon Pulse was not cutting it. When Togetic comes out, I go for a Flash Cannon hoping it would do a ton of damage, but it hangs on very well. On the following turn, we use an Ice Punch to knock it out. Fifth is Milotic, and while I debated on which move to use, I used Ice Punch and got the freeze. If I hadn't got the freeze, we might not have won because it's super bulky and it does know Miracle, which is basically a special version of Counter. Milotic remains frozen until we defeat it, and while she could have healed it at any point in time, Cynthia chose not to heal, and her last is Roserade, who goes down to a Psychic, winning us the final battle. I've got to say that if Calm Mind were available to us sooner instead of the Battle Frontier, we probably would have used it to boost our stats and earn us the victory much sooner. Anyways, next week will be the continuation of our evolution run with Umbreon. I'm just about finished with the run. I just need motivation to make it through with school this week and actually sit down, make the script, record, and edit the video. As always, thank you so much for watching the video. If you made it this far, go ahead and like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. Like I said before, the algorithm has not been kind to us whatsoever, as our usual 5,000 to 8,000 views has literally been less than 500 views. We work really hard for these videos, and hopefully that will be reflected in the near future. Anyways, I hope you guys have a wonderful day, and I'll catch y'all in the next one.